James thought it was just another slow morning at the store until a local loudmouth turned his life into a public spectacle. Spilled drinks, shattered pride, and a Hollywood megastar walking through the door. Yeah, things got messy real quick. But what happened next didn't just shake the room, it shook the internet. Let's start from the top. It was one of those mornings that felt too perfect to last, sunlight streaming through the shop's windows, catching every speck of dust midair like it was some kind of cosmic disco. James, a 21-year-old black student, stood behind the counter of the small-town convenience store, focused on rearranging the gum display. Not exactly the highlight of his week, but hey, the job paid for books, rent, and the occasional burrito binge. Everything was fine, until the door slammed open so hard it sounded like someone was trying to break the sound barrier with pure attitude. In walked Bill, a man in his 40s with a leather jacket that looked older than time and a face that screamed, "I haven't slept in weeks, and it's your problem now." Bill was the town's self-proclaimed watchdog, though most folks just called him a bully with a superiority complex. "Hey you," Bill barked, his voice cutting through the quiet like a knife through butter. James looked up, already bracing himself. His gut told him this wasn't going to end with a polite thank you and a smile. Nope, not today. Bill stomped toward the counter, his boots hitting the floor with the subtlety of a wrecking ball. His face was twisted into a smirk that could curdle milk. "What kind of service is this, huh? You're just standing there looking useless. Typical." James kept his cool. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" "Oh, don't play nice with me," Bill sneered, leaning closer. "You think you're smart, don't you? Acting like you're better than me." He grabbed a bag of chips off the racks and tossed it onto the counter like it owed him money. "Ring it up, and hurry up. I've got places to be." James scanned the bag, keeping his face neutral. He had dealt with Bill before, but something about today felt off. The man's usual hostility had a sharper edge, like he was looking for a fight. "Do you even know who I am?" Bill snarled, stepping around the counter and grabbing James by the collar of his shirt. "You're here because we let you be here. Without people like me, you wouldn't even have a—" The sentence hung in the air, unfinished, as the door creaked open again. This time, the room's atmosphere shifted. Standing in the doorway was none other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Yeah, that Dwayne Johnson. He was dressed casually in a tracksuit holding a water bottle, but his sheer presence was like a lightning bolt. It wasn't every day a Hollywood megastar casually walked into your corner store, and the shock was visible on every customer's face. "Is everything all right here?" Dwayne asked, his voice calm yet impossibly commanding. Bill froze, his grip loosening on James's shirt as he turned to face the towering figure in the doorway. His expression flickered between irritation and fear, like a dog realizing the squirrel it was chasing was actually a bear. "This doesn't concern you, buddy," Bill shot back, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Why don't you mind your own business?" Dwayne took a step forward, his gaze steady, his tone level. "See, the thing is, it does concern me when someone's being treated like this, so why don't we all take a deep breath and rethink our choices?" The room fell silent, save for the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. Customers peeked out from behind the shelves, their eyes wide with anticipation. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Bill puffed up his chest, trying to maintain the upper hand. But as Dwayne stepped closer, his sheer size and calm confidence made it clear who was really in control. "You don't know who you're messing with," Bill muttered, though his bravado was quickly evaporating. Dwayne's response was simple, a raised eyebrow and a slight tilt of his head that said, "Really? You want to test that?" And just like that, the stage was set. The shop was no longer just a small-town convenience store. It was a battlefield, and everyone in the room knew they were about to witness something unforgettable. Dwayne stepped forward, calm as a summer breeze, and locked eyes with Bill. His voice was steady, almost too steady, like he'd seen this kind of nonsense 100 times before. "Listen," Dwayne began, his tone somewhere between patient teacher and fed-up parent. "I get it, you're having a bad day. Maybe your coffee was cold, maybe traffic sucked, or maybe life's just throwing curveballs at you. But none of that gives you the right to take it out on people who are just here doing their job." For a moment, Bill froze like his brain needed a reboot. But then, as if on cue, his need to prove he was in charge kicked in. He turned toward the nearest shelf, grabbed a can of energy drink, and cracked it open with an exaggerated flair. Without breaking eye contact, he tipped it over, letting the fizzy liquid spill all over the counter and drip onto the floor. "You think you can talk down to me?" Bill growled, his voice louder now, though it lacked the conviction he probably hoped for. "You think you're the hero here? Guess what, buddy? This ain't Hollywood." James winced at the mess, his hands balling into fists at his sides. The other customers held their breath, some already pulling out their phones, hoping to catch whatever was about to go down. Dwayne? He didn't flinch. Instead, he chuckled, a low, knowing laugh that somehow managed to be both disarming and terrifying. "Hero?" Dwayne said, taking a slow step forward. "Let me tell you something about heroes. A hero isn't the guy who shouts the loudest or makes the biggest mess. A hero is the one who steps up when it counts, who stands up for others, even when it's not easy. So here's the deal. We're gonna fix this situation right now, and nobody else in this store is gonna have their day ruined. Sound good?" Bill's face twisted into a grimace. He wasn't used to people pushing back, especially not someone as composed and towering as Dwayne. Desperation flickered in his eyes as he lunged, swinging his arm in what could only be described as a last-ditch effort to save face. Bad move. Before anyone could even blink, Dwayne caught Bill's arm mid-swing with a precision that seemed almost choreographed. With a firm, controlled motion, he twisted it just enough to immobilize Bill without causing harm. The can of energy drink clattered to the floor, rolling away with a sad hiss. "Now," Dwayne said, his voice still maddeningly calm, "you've got two choices. You can cool off and walk out of here, or I can call the police and we can take this up a notch. Your call." Bill squirmed, his bravado crumbling faster than a stale cookie. "You can't do this. I'll, he stammered, but the rest of the sentence never quite materialized. His empty threats hung in the air, pathetic and hollow. Then James stepped forward. His voice was steady, though his hands still trembled slightly. "Mr. Johnson," he began, addressing Dwayne directly, "it's okay. This guy isn't the problem. He's just another product of a system that taught him to hate anything different. Let him go." Dwayne raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed by James's poise. After a beat, he released Bill's arm, stepping back but keeping his eyes locked on him. "You're free to go," Dwayne said, his voice carrying a finality that left no room for argument. "But remember this, what you do says a lot more about you than what you say." Bill didn't stick around to respond. With his pride in shambles and the entire store watching, he stumbled toward the door, knocking over a display of chips on his way out. The sound of falling bags echoed behind him as the door slammed shut. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the overhead lights. Slowly, the tension began to dissolve, replaced by a sense of collective relief. One by one, the customers lowered their phones, some nodding in silent admiration at Dwayne, others throwing James encouraging smiles. James exhaled deeply, finally letting his shoulders relax. "That was intense," he muttered, glancing at the spilled drink on the counter. Dwayne turned to him, offering a small, reassuring smile. "You handled it well. It's not easy standing your ground in a situation like that. You got guts, kid." For the first time that day, James allowed himself to smile back. The store settled into an almost eerie silence after Bill's hasty retreat. It was as if the walls themselves were exhaling after holding their breath for too long. James wiped the counter with a rag, trying to shake off the adrenaline still rushing through his veins. But the peace didn't last long. One of the customers, a teenager in a hoodie with a smartphone practically glued to his hand, shouted, "Yo, this is gonna blow up online." Turns out, the kid had been recording the entire scene. Within minutes, the video was uploaded, the caption screaming something like, "The Rock handles local bully like a pro." It didn't take long for the internet to do its thing. By the time James clocked out that evening, the clip was already racking up views faster than you could say overnight sensation. The next morning, James woke up to a buzzing phone. His notifications were exploding, texts, tags, and even a call from his mom, who was borderline hysterical with pride and worry. "Baby, I saw you on the news. You were so brave. But what were you thinking standing up to that man? And was that really Dwayne Johnson? Like the Dwayne Johnson?" she asked in one breath. James couldn't help but laugh. "Yeah, Mom, that was him. And I guess the whole world knows about it now." Meanwhile, Bill's life was taking a sharp nosedive. The same video that made James and Dwayne internet heroes turned Bill into the poster child for bad behavior. News outlets picked up the story, and soon people were digging into his past. A string of complaints about his temper and questionable antics came to light, and suddenly, Bill was everyone's favorite example of "don't be this guy." At the same time, the video sparked conversations about standing up to injustice, even in the small, everyday moments. James found himself being tagged in posts with captions like, "Real courage starts here," and "This kid's got more guts than most adults." Then came the message that caught him completely off guard, an invite from Dwayne Johnson himself. The message was short and straightforward. "Lunch tomorrow? My treat. Got some things I'd like to discuss." James stared at his screen, half convinced it was a prank. But when he showed up at the little cafe Dwayne had suggested, there he was, every bit as charismatic and larger than life as he seemed on screen. The lunch started casually, with Dwayne asking about James's studies and plans for the future. But soon, the conversation turned serious. "You know," Dwayne said, leaning forward slightly, "what you did back there wasn't just brave, it was important. A lot of people freeze when they're faced with that kind of situation, but you stood your ground. People like you, James, are the ones who changed the world." James blinked, caught off guard by the weight of those words. I didn't really think. I just knew I couldn't let him treat me or anyone else like that." "And that's exactly why it matters," Dwayne said, his tone firm but encouraging. "It's not about being perfect or fearless. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. That's what inspires people." By the end of lunch, James felt like he was walking on air. He wasn't just the kid behind the counter anymore. He was someone who had taken a stand and made an impact. And hearing that from someone like Dwayne Johnson was a game changer. The story didn't end there, though. The video continued to circulate, sparking discussions about everyday acts of courage and the importance of speaking up against wrongs, no matter how small they seemed. James knew his life had taken a turn, not because he'd gone viral, but because he'd proven to himself that he was capable of more than he ever realized. And the lesson? Even in the darkest moments, there's room for hope, action, and change. Sometimes, all it takes is one person to light the spark. What would you have done in his place? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you or someone you know ever faced a situation like this? Let us know how you handled it. Don't forget to like and share this story if it resonated with you. This story was created with the hope of shedding light on important issues and making the world a better place. Your opinion matters. Let's work together to spread awareness and inspire change.